This is talking about the same thing. The ruler of this world is Satan, and he rules through his children, who control human society. The 12 tribes of Israel are the only human group that can defeat them, led by the God of Israel, directing his will through me. Notice in the picture on the right that the dragon is creating what appears to be an ice storm from the end of its tail. That says that they control the weather, which I've shown is true. They're the ones that are going to create all of those disasters that are described in Revelation, including a massive ice storm. The whore of Babylon represents the Dracs and their empire, which controls all the nations. The beast she's riding has 7 heads and 10 horns like the dragon, and that represents a global organization. That would be the UN. The beast is a military coalition formed out of the UN that they put together to attack Israel. Obviously, this happens after I become the leader of Israel. The beast is a composite of different creatures, each one symbolizing a superpower. The leopard's body represents Europe, the EU. The bear's feet represents Russia, and the lion's mouth represents the United States. The mouth speaking great things is the false prophet, who will basically be the front man for the coalition. The coalition lasts for 42 months, 3.5 years, from the time of its inception to the time its forces are destroyed in Israel. This is the same beast described by Daniel, except that it's shown as 4 separate beasts. A lion with eagle's wings is definitely the United States. The description of the 4th beast is clearly that of a military coalition. Its purpose is to destroy. The horn speaking pompous words is the false prophet. The 4th beast, the coalition, is destroyed in the battle in Israel, but the other beasts, the US, Europe, and Russia, continue to exist after that. When I see images like this, it makes me inclined to believe that Pope Francis will be the false prophet described in Revelation, and obviously the last pope. They can certainly make it look like he's capable of performing healing miracles. All they have to do is bring deformed Dracs like this guy, have the Pope lay hands on him, and then later, the Drac morphs back to his normal human imitation form. So it looks like the Pope healed him. He can gain a lot of followers that way, and perhaps turn himself into a godlike figure in the public's eye. Notice that his left hand is turned gray, along with part of the guy's head where he's touching, and he's also reverting one of the ridges on the side of his forehead. This prophecy in Psalm 2 is describing the time when the nations assemble in the UN to form the military coalition. Tumultuously assembled is a better description than just rage, which is why I included Young's literal translation. They're going to call emergency meetings in the UN right after I become the leader of Israel. That's when the military coalition will be put together. This is talking about the other world leaders denouncing me in the UN and in the media in general. This prophecy in Psalm 118 is talking about the same thing. All the other nations in the world will send their militaries to attack Israel. And it says here as well that the coalition is defeated. I am the right hand of the God of Israel, and my Father says that I will effectively live forever. These two passages are saying that Jerusalem will be captured and occupied by coalition forces or by some nation's military. The one from Revelation says that they'll be there for 42 months. So it must happen very early in the conflict, since that's the entire lifespan of the coalition. There's a very large percentage of Dracs in the population of Jerusalem, maybe more than any other city in the world. So that might explain why it would fall so easily. This is describing the battle which takes place in Israel between the coalition forces and my army. The coalition is defeated, and everyone that's part of it dies in that place. I already have a strategy in mind, but I'd be stupid to discuss that here. The 144,000, the strongest souls from the tribes of Israel. My Father will empower them to fight this battle, and he will also extend their lives. Obviously, you can't be one of the 144,000 if you don't have Jewish ancestry. You can be half Jewish or less, like me, but if you have no Jewish ancestry at all, then it's not possible. A soul of Israel can only incarnate into a Jewish bloodline. In my case, it's even more specific. I can only incarnate into a bloodline of King David, and perhaps even more specifically, a descendant of my first incarnation. Of course, that would mean that I had children with Mary Magdalene. The other requirement stated here is that you have to be a virgin, which I am. It says not defiled with women, which implies that you would also have to be male. But I'm not sure if that should be interpreted in a strictly literal way. I'm open to the possibility that females could also be chosen. Another way to tell if you're one of the chosen is if you felt the sealing process in your forehead. It's a tugging sensation that feels like a muscle spasm, except that the muscles aren't moving. It doesn't last long, and it happens intermittently, a few times per month, if that. That's been my experience anyway. If you claim to be one of the chosen, but are not, that'll become evident at some point, because you won't be empowered, and you won't live longer. If you intentionally try to fake it, you may fool people for a while, but my Father will know, and he will punish or even destroy your soul for that deception. However, if you're just innocently mistaken, then there probably won't be any retribution. This is describing how my Father will empower us for this battle. We'll be vastly outnumbered, so we'll need this to defeat the coalition. After the coalition is defeated, and once they feel that they've lost control of the surface world, the Dracs will go underground into their own cities. They know they'll have to wait quite a long time before they can return to the surface, after enough human generations have passed, when they've forgotten about them. Once the human population is no longer aware of them, the Dracs can safely return to the surface and begin infiltrating those societies, in their human imitation forms, of course. Eventually, they take over the leadership of those nations, and they send their armies to attack Israel again. And once again, they're defeated, apparently for the last time. At that point, we may be able to get into the Dracs' underground cities and clear them out, and perhaps even inside the moon. This prophecy from Ezekiel is describing the same battle between Israel and the coalition, though it is possible that it's about the battle that takes place later, after the Dracs have returned to the surface. In either case, it's a massive force, which is a coalition of all the other nations. When it says riding on horses, it means riding in vehicles. That was the only way to describe it with the language of that time, since there were no vehicles then. It's the same with bows and arrows. That represents any kind of projectile weapon. In the second battle, I suppose it's possible that they actually are back to riding on horses and using bows and arrows. If that's true, then it won't be a contest, because Israel will still have modern weapons and beyond. Rule in the midst of your enemies. As the leader of Israel, I will be the only human leader in the world. All the others are Dracs. The ultimate objective is to remove them from the positions of leadership in those other countries, and then replace them with human leaders. That will be the continuation of the war after the coalition is defeated in Israel. The remaining military forces in those countries will have to be neutralized to accomplish that. That's what this is describing. This is a physical description of a Drac's horns, and that matches what we've seen. You also know what a Drac's voice sounds like, thanks to Alien Resurrection and the band Manowar. At some point, they may decide to show themselves in their native forms, to intimidate the human population into submission. But they would only do that as a last resort, once they had exhausted the usual methods of control. Babylon is the current world order, It's the false world that you've been living in your entire life. The only thing that's changed is your understanding of it. It's always been an alien construct, but they had you believing in the illusion that it's a human world. You've always been a slave, but you believe that you are free. By your sorcery, all the nations were deceived. That's primarily talking about their polymorphic ability, which has allowed them to imitate human bodies. Without that ability, they wouldn't be able to control us. Not this easily, anyway. All of these passages are talking about Drax being burned with fire. Now you know why that would be necessary. Even if they appear to be fatally wounded, they may not actually be dead. You think you're looking at a human corpse, but you may be looking at a Drac imitation that's pretending to be dead. After you've left, it regenerates its body, stands up, and walks away. As you've seen, they can simulate injuries using their polymorphic ability and pretend to be dead before they even get hit. That's why in a situation like that, you'd have to burn every corpse that you find. Unless you want to test each body to determine if it's a human or a Drac, which of course would be dangerous for you. When it says aliens or Canaanites, I don't think it's talking about human foreigners, Gentiles. I think it's referring to Dracs. My father doesn't mind the presence of Gentiles in Israel, and he accepts all those who are willing to serve him. So I'm certain this isn't talking about them. As I said, there's an unusually high percentage of Dracs in the Jewish population of Israel. It could be as much as half of the total population in some areas. This is an abomination to my father. He does not tolerate the presence of these monsters among his people. He wants me to completely remove the synagogue of Satan from Israel. That's what he's talking about here.